East Coastway is one of TSW's older UK routes, and it really started to show its age within the last year or two. To my surprise, a remaster was announced in early February 2026, then released on the 26th of that month. And here I was, thinking that the only improvement, of sorts, that this route would get would be the addition of the Southern Class 171 and Class 377-3. Why do they not add the 377-1 as well? Anyway, in spite of the disappointingly short route coverage, I have historically had a lot of time for ECW because it offers a peaceful environment in which to run third rail electric multiple units. East Coastway was originally released in December 2019, over 6 years ago now, and it's still available on Steam for $43.59 NZD, or whatever the equivalent is in your local currency, at full price. The remaster was done by a consortium of Rivet Games and Grump Dog Games, the latter being the same bloke who made the Great Western Express remaster. Considering Rivet's track record of low-quality DLC, I was very cautiously optimistic over how the ECW remaster would turn out. As alluded to in the introduction, this is a pretty short route, only running for 23 miles from Brighton to Eastbourne, and you get the 7-mile long Seaford branch as well. A major downside to ECW's route coverage not being extended to Ashford International is the fact that the only in-game section on which we can take the Class 171 for a decently long run in a prototypical setting is entirely electrified. As for motive power, the base ECW route only includes the Class 377-4 Electrostar in Southern colours and the Class 66 diesel locomotive in EWS colours, along with JNA freight wagons. This was the first of, what has since become, a ridiculous amount of times when the Class 66 was recycled. Back in October 2021, we also got the Class 313 electric multiple unit as a separately sold add-on for ECW. Thinking back to the Class 377, I'm confused as to why only one variant of this train was included in the ECW route, and why Dovetail and Rivet made that same mistake in the Brighton Mainline and Class 171/377-3 packs of 2021 and 2026 respectively. In any case, I am of the opinion that this Electrostar model in TSW is pretty poor, and I say that primarily because the front end looks too chunky. Here's a photograph of a real 377 for comparison. As for what's meant to be included in the remaster, there are scenery and texture upgrades throughout the route, an upgrade to TOD4 lighting, an addition of the disused Newhaven Marine Station, which is located on the short spur down from Newhaven Harbour, the addition of rail singing, AI trains blasting their horns when they pass a whistle board, updated landscape and foliage assets, updated track and ballast, including new track shadows, updated signal visuals, updated light baking for tunnels and stations, updated yard areas in Brighton and Eastbourne, and the addition of station announcements.
The next train to depart from platform 1 will be the 10:27 Southern Service to Brighton, Allington, Bishopston, Newhaven Harbour, Newhaven Town, Southeast, Lewis, Falmouth, Molescombe, London Road, and Brighton. Customers are reminded to mind the gap between the train and the platform edge when boarding platform 1 for them.
The next station is Polegate.
The Class 377-4 and Class 66 have received train faults, but only for the wipers, along with suspension improvements, driver assist, which I find more annoying than anything else, updated wheel blur, as opposed to wheel oasis, and, in the case of the Class 377-4, guard mode and onboard announcements. But based on what I learned from watching Train Sim Society's review, Guard mode on the ECW 377-4 is completely broken, and what I saw in that video was enough to put me off from wanting to try guard mode myself. If you ask me, it's not a good look for the game when one of its core features is still on the fritz. Similar to the New Jersey Transit Arrow 3, I like the new suspension physics on the Class 313, particularly when she's going over points. As for the Class 377-4, her suspension is also decent, but not as lively as the 313, if you ask me. On my end at least, the announcements work as expected for the most part, and I haven't really had any major issues with them.
This train is the Southern service to Seaford. The next station is Bishopston.
For the longest time, I was never really a fan of the default sounds on East Coastway's 377, and I noticed that they've been used again on Rivet's 377-3. The default sounds on the 377-4 from Brighton mainline were better by comparison, if you ask me. There's a sound mod for the Electrostars, made by Itsy165 and available from the TrainSim community website, but it hasn't yet been updated to accommodate the 377-3. I know of the Electrostar enhancement pack that's available on the aforementioned website, but I haven't got it yet because one of the requirements is the North London line route add-on, and I will not pick up the NLL until the Richmond extension is released, whenever that may be. Meanwhile, there is a new timetable for East Coastway, but it's locked behind a paywall in the form of Rivet's 171 and 377-3 pack. Getting that add-on is effectively the only way you'll be able to see Thameslink and Gatwick Express trains on the ECW version of Brighton, which I can imagine being annoying for people who don't want to bother with the 171 and 377-3. After all, the new timetables for Great Western Express and Schnellfahrstrecke Köln were not locked behind a paywall, so why should East Coastway be in a different situation? With Rivet's new add-on installed alongside the remaster and Class 313, there's a confusing situation regarding the timetables. I got two of them mixed up at first, but remembered that the one labelled as Class 313 is what came with the 313 add-on in 2021, and the one labelled as 2018 is the variant of the new timetable that has 313s on the Lewis and Seaford services, instead of the 377-3. I was disappointed to find wacky-looking rails on this set of points at Eastbourne. The third rail sitting too low, for whatever reason. A huge amount of NPCs stuck in a Class 171's doorway at Eastbourne. The general foliage not looking as good as it does on Great Western Express, especially in this cutting between Lewis and Falmer, as well as the 2D line-side foliage looking awful under TOD4 lighting, the bizarre lack of tunnel reverb, a bug in the Class 313's cab where you get an AWS ding upon pressing the cab light button. How this made it through testing is anyone's guess. A bug at Brighton where you can glitch through the overall roof while using the free roam camera. And the station announcements sounding really quiet, even when you're right next to the loudspeaker.
Platform 2 for the 1408 Southern Service 2 or calling at Eastbourne, Hampton Park, Pevensey and Westham, Pevensey Bay, Norman's Bay, Couden Beach, Collington, Bexhill, St Leonard's, Hastings and or the next train to depart.
And there was also one instance at Eastbourne where I was hearing flange squeal noises despite the lack of a moving train anywhere near the station. One time, when I was approaching Lewis from the east, the weather had become pretty foggy, after starting out clear and sunny when I first loaded the service at Eastbourne. Suddenly, The thick fog disappeared within a split second and with no warning. That sort of bug with the dynamic weather is not isolated to ECW, and is very unpredictable, so I didn't manage to catch it on camera. I also found that the stop marker on platform 4 at Lewis was set too far back, so half of the last coach was left off the end of the platform. As for performance, this is one aspect I still like about the East Coastway route, in addition to its generally peaceful environment. On my end, the frame rate averages between 75 and 110 frames per second, with very little, if any, stuttering. I wish all TSW routes ran as smoothly as this one does. Although there are still some things that I like about it, I am of the brutally honest opinion that the East Coastway remaster simply doesn't live up to the high standards set by the Great Western Express remaster, and quite frankly, there was a point where I felt like I couldn't wait to be done with this review and get back to focusing on something that causes less frustration, if any. To be fair, the TOD4 lighting, new timetable, and addition of station and on-train announcements are welcome improvements, but, and this is a big but, remember the fact that the new timetable is locked behind a paywall, not to mention the presence of those numerous aforementioned issues that should have been fixed prior to release. My take on this remaster was not based on any bias or vendetta against the developers. Instead, it was simply based on my observations of the content that was released to the public by Dovetail Games. Considering how good the GWE remaster turned out, and the fact that it was done by one guy in his spare time, I do not think it's unreasonable to have high expectations for the East Coastway remaster, especially since it was worked on by multiple people. The remaster may be a free update, but like I said about the Schnellfahrstrecke Köln remaster, that shouldn't excuse it from being held to a high standard of quality. Come to think of it, if any future remasters are not going to live up to the standard set by Mr. Liam's work on GWE, should they even be marketed as if they were full remasters in the first place? Anyway, and to try and end the video on a positive note, if you've stuck around to the end, you win tickets to a comedy show about bees that had an accident in the bathroom. It's the funny honey runny on the dunny.